podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to a new podcast, The Paddock and the Pavilion with Stephen Wallace. In each show, Stephen will interview someone connected to the world of horse racing or cricket.
Hello everyone, we are back to the turf today, and on Thursday the 29th of July, an exciting new racing venture, the Racing League, is about to start. And I'm with Oli Harris, their Chief Marketing Officer, to tell us all about it. Great to have you on the podcast, Oli.
Thanks, Stephen. I feel very privileged to be on. Thanks very much for having me.
Well, thank you. Well, we've got the 100 coming up this week for cricket, and we've now got the Racing League starting on the 29th of July. How are plans going less than 2 weeks before the first meeting at Newcastle?
As you can imagine, it's pretty hectic. We kind of knew that the Euros were going to kind of take everyone's attention for some, for a month or so. And then everything was going to sort of kick off all at once. And especially when you've got broadcast partners like we do in Sky and Talk Sport that are, obviously very football focused. It's suddenly sort of, now the Euros are finished, everything sort of switched on with venom. So yeah, everything's going well, but still quite a lot to do with 10 days until we start the first race meeting.
And you were due to start like the 100 was in 2020.
Yeah, we were supposed to go last July after we actually launched at the Queen's Club on, I can't remember, early March. And then there was Cheltenham about a week later. And then, of course, everything was locked down soon after that. And it became apparent pretty quickly that, even if there were people back on if there was racing back on, there wouldn't be people there. And, Racing League's focus was about fans. And, we made the decision pretty early that we had no choice but to delay, which from a business point of view is a killer because, you don't have any income or any way of making any money for a year. So, it's not been easy to get to this point. But, we laid down £2 million worth of prize money, and that's the motivation for us really to get the show on the road. And so the last year has been difficult, but it has given us a bit of extra time for planning and coming up with some other ideas. So in some ways, it's been a sort of a poisoned benefit, if you like.
Right. Well, to start with, I wanted to get to know your own racing background.
Yeah, well, I don't actually have a background in racing per se. I've been a racing fan, if you like. I've always paid an interest in racing. My family, especially my dad, is a big racing fan. But it was never something I worked in. Jeremy Ray, who came up with the team idea a few years ago, he and I have played tennis together, and I have a sort of a hobby website called The Sporting Blog that I interviewed Jeremy for in his capacity as a former chairman of Swindon Town. Basically an interview about what it's like to be a chairman of a football club in the lower leagues. And as we did that, and we talked about a few other things, and I worked in marketing for 20 plus years, and in various sports as a consultant and whatever. And, we kind of hatched this idea, and it sort of grew and grew. And Ben and Charlie also got involved, and all of a sudden we had this idea, and, we raised some money to launch the business and do various things. And here we are. So, but I think, Jeremy's background is very much in racing, and Charlie obviously as well. But I think it was kind of an on-purpose decision to make sure that we weren't all completely inside the racing bubble, and to take some learnings from our previous sort of careers and different sectors and put that into racing. And I think, that's probably the result is what you see on screen now when you look at Racing League.
Well, it's probably a good idea to get some perspective from people outside, as you say, the bubble, to give fresh ideas. Has this idea been used abroad anywhere?
Well, so the thing is, we launched this idea, if you like, at the end of 2017, I think was when we first mooted it. And we had some press releases, I think, around 2018, beginning of the year. There's actually one in Australia that's not the same. They're called something similar, but there is the idea of racing with teams, but it's not quite the same thing. Look, it's been done before, right? There's been the football furlong, which was where the jockeys rode in football kits. I've actually got the Tottenham Hotspur silks that someone donated to me when I first started working in racing. And there's obviously the Shergar Cup every year at Ascot, which is a one-day sort of team event. But I don't think anyone's previously sort of tried to join the dots, if you like, and make a sort of season out of it. So ours is obviously 6 weeks, six events. I think it's that level of consistency probably hasn't been thought of before, because it's expensive, right? That's the truth. It's not a cheap thing to do, to buy racing fixtures, if you like, through the sponsorship and put on the events and pay everyone. So, the thought of it is quite daunting. So no, I don't think anyone's really done anything similar, but I expect they will going forward. It's our ambition to take Racing League to other jurisdictions once we've proven that the concept works here and that there's a market for it. We'll obviously see how that goes, but look, it's not a rocket science format. That's the whole point of it. It's meant to take the things that other sports do well and just apply them to racing for our event only. I'm not saying that this should replace anything else in racing. These are new fixtures, it's new money, it's completely separate. We're not involving the pattern, we're not getting involved in group horses, nothing like that. So, it's a purely, it's an added extra, if you like, and in a format that maybe people can get into. Maybe the purists won't love it quite so much, but at the end of the day, it's still 36 horse races.
Well, thanks for that. We know that the league starts on the 29th of July, and you've mentioned a few things there in your brief introduction there, but can you let us know more about the format?
Yeah, so there's 12 teams, and each team is made up of 30 horses, 3 jockeys, and about 2 to 4 trainers, depending on the team setup. Some have 2, some have 4. Those teams will each enter 1 horse in each of 36 races. So we have 12 runners guaranteed, apart from any last minute injury or something, in all 36 races. And 1 team has 1 horse in each. So from race 1 all the way through to race 36, you'll see the same teams, the same jockeys riding in the same team colours week after week. And that's the kind of simplicity of the format. And it's great to guarantee 12 runner handicaps. They're very bookmaker friendly. I think there is a good number of horses for a handicap race, and it's really quite that simple. I think that the team element and the league, so by winning a race you get 25 points, and points go all the way down to 10th place, which gets 1 point, very much like Formula One. The league structure and who's going to win that kind of adds the narrative to it, but in terms of actually watching the racing, it's pretty straightforward. It's not, the whole point of the team format was that you'll get used to the fact that Holly Doyle is wearing the black of Team Talk Sport each week, or however often she rides, and you can identify that black team is Team Talk Sport straight away. You don't need to go down to your race card and find out who's running in the spots and the stripes and the colour hat and who's the jockey and all the rest. It's supposed to be a thing that anyone could turn on the TV and kind of get pretty quickly. Of course, it will take a bit of explaining, just because people that know racing think of it in a certain way. People who don't know racing don't know what's going on anyway. That's the truth. So we hope that the format provides some simplicity. But the week after week action, I think, is the key bit. 6 races a night on Thursday, every Thursday for 6 weeks. And the interesting thing, of course, is that what happens in race 1, in theory, will affect what happens in race 24. Because these races are connected. If you won every race, of course, you win the league. But if you finish 3rd or 4th, then 2nd, then 5th, 1st, you still might win that night, and you might put yourself in a very good position in the table. So everything's to play for. The horses will be ridden fully. There's no point in hanging back the horse and not trying or any of that stuff, because you're not looking after racing. You're trying to get points. So it should be. And
you've got all the top jockeys and trainers involved, haven't you?
Well, quite a lot of them. There's obviously, we can't fit everyone in, and that's certainly been debated on social media this weekend about how we managed to get the trainers in and why there's 40 of them and not more. But yes, we've got a lot of support from the trainers and jockeys. Of course, it's good prize money, so they're all very keen. We would have loved to have had more in, but there's only so many horses you can fit on the track, and there's only so many people you can have in a team. So we've got a wonderful selection of trainers. We've also got quite a lot of upcoming jockeys, which is important to me, especially. We've got 4 or 5 really good young stars like Laura Pearson, Safi Osborne, Marco Gianni, David Egan. These are the next generation of superstar. And it's great for us to have some of the young guys in amongst the people like Paul Hannigan, Frankie Dettori, and Martin Dwyer,
And trainers-wise, you've got John Gosden, and I think you've got Joseph O'Brien as well, haven't you?
Yeah, Team Ireland is Joseph and Donica O'Brien. That's a very interesting team. All the horses actually were submitted to us on Tuesday, all 360 horses that we made public fairly soon. But they're all very strong teams, but the Irish team is an interesting one to watch because there's a few syndicates that have gone out there and bought horses specifically for Racing League and sent them to Joseph and Donica. And probably one of the... Well, there's actually a lot of teams to watch, but I think the O'Briens are quite canny. I would put them amongst the top 3 or 4 favourites to win the competition. That's just me. By the way, I'm a terrible tipster, so if anyone's listening, don't put your money on my suggestions. But I'm just saying they've got a strong team.
Oh, we'll look out for them then. But you've mentioned it before, but the prize money is very good, isn't it, for these handicap races? Yeah,
£50,000 a race. I don't know what the exact average for this level of 0 to 90 horses, but they wouldn't probably be riding for any more than 5 or 6, 7,000 on a daily basis. So it's a significant boost. So it's £2 million overall prize money because the winning team gets 150k, and then there's a £50,000 jockeys sort of championship that runs alongside as well. So the top 3 jockeys in the competition will split the 50 grand as well, and the 150 grand for the winning team is 30 grand to the owners, 30 grand to the stable staff, which we think is important, 60 to the trainers, I think, and then some more for the jockeys. So we're trying really hard to. We can't change the prize money format. That's not anything to do with us. We put forward the prize money, but with the winning prize, we wanted to make sure that the stable staff were rewarded as well because they're as big a part of the team as anyone else.
And there's six races on 6 separate Thursdays. What race courses are involved?
So we start at Newcastle, and then we drop down. So week 1 is Newcastle, then we drop down to Doncaster for week 2, then to Lingfield, then Windsor, then Lingfield again, and then the finale at Newcastle.
And each race is over different distances. You've got a range, haven't you?
That's right. So the 6 races, they're 5 furlongs, 6 furlongs, 7, then a mile, mile and a quarter, mile and a half. So the kind of full gamut of distances, which makes it interesting because obviously the teams have entered horses on that basis. There's a sprint division, the middle distances, and then they're kind of the more getting towards the staying races. So it's very interesting. And again, once the full list of horses is out, people will be able to see how the teams have picked their horses to accommodate those different races. But the same distances each night. Again, trying to keep it as simple as possible. 2 sprints, 2 middle distance, and 2 longer distance races.
And you've mentioned it before, but what's the reaction been from the industry?
It's been mixed. There's no doubt about it. We've obviously got a hell of a lot of support, as from people worn out by the number of trainers, jockeys, and sponsors that are involved. But there'll always be scepticism. Obviously, this podcast has a very strong cricket angle to it, and we've said a few times, 20 odd years ago, whenever it was, if I'd walked into Lords and said to the ECB, I'm going to get everyone to wear pink clothes, go out batting to music, put a hot tub by the side of the pool, and it's, by the way, it's only 20 overs, people would have fallen off their chair. But you have to try new ideas, and in the case of 2020, it's been more than a roaring success. I don't think personally it's to the detriment of the long format of the game. Perhaps technique has suffered a bit, and perhaps there are now specialist players, but if anything, that means that it has been a success because you've got people who specialise in different formats of the game, which means more people can earn a living and put on the show. I think in our case, it's something a bit similar. Again, we're not saying that it should get in the way of the standard racing, the pattern or any of that stuff. So look, everyone is going to be watching probably with a raised eyebrow, but we've put an awful lot of money into the media side of it. We're trying to promote it to the person in the street rather than just racing fans. And we hope that it captures the public's imagination a bit.
And you've also attracted some new sponsors and new funding for any sport, in particular racing, is good news.
Well, yeah, I mean, that often goes unnoticed that we brought in so far. Well, by the end of today, I think we have brought in 11 or 12 brand new sponsors to racing who've never put a penny in before. And of course, we are now about the fourth or fifth biggest sponsor in racing by virtue of the prize money we put up ourselves. So, yeah, I mean, it's all new money for the sport. And these brands, you know, the likes of eToro and Odds Bible and the GOAT Agency, you know, these are pretty fresh, interesting companies with vision, with purpose. And I think that horse racing sponsorship has long been one of those things where if the CEO of a company likes racing, you know, they do something in racing. And that's the same in all sports, I'm sure. But racing can't really survive on that. So we need to offer them something. And this is the kind of circular discussion that if we didn't have the team format, we wouldn't be able to put a sponsor's name against a team. So the argument, the team format's no good. Well, it's necessary. That's how the sponsorship comes. And they want to sponsor the team because they want the fans to engage. So without the team thing, there is no sponsorship and there is no fan engagement. So people might moan that the team format is against the ethos of racing, was a quote I saw on Twitter this weekend. But if the ethos of racing is to have no racing because there's no money, then fine, you won't have any racing. People can moan about prize money until the cows come home and blame bookmakers for it. But at the end of the day, lots of other sports and most sports are pinned up by two things: media rights and commercial partnerships. And football does it brilliantly. NFL, NBA, MLB, golf, tennis, they do it fantastically. And that's why these players earn so much money. And in racing, everyone's starved and clawing at trying to get every penny here, there and everywhere. But the commercial side of the sport at the moment is not doing what it should be. So our idea, which is an idea until it's proven, has brought in money, and so we've established one thing. Now let's see if the show entertains people as well and the brands get what they hope they're going to get out of it.
And I think the generation of today like the team idea as well. And we've seen through the IPL, like you're saying about the attachment of businesses and very large brands attaching themselves to teams has worked as well. And who knows, the ECB are against it, but I can't see that not happening at some time in the 100 if that's a successful venture as well.
Well, it's worked in motorsport ever since, you know, it began. That's because someone had to fund those teams to begin with, right? And it was the same in baseball when it started professionally. You know, people owe the teams, and then they gave them names and nicknames to make them more. But, you know, you look at Japanese rugby, Japanese football, you know, these teams are owned by companies, so their brand's attached to it. In our case, it's quite simple. We have a lot of prize money to pay for, and the teams need partnering. Now, a shirt sponsorship is one thing, but naming a racing team, you can't really do that in anything else but motorsport, or maybe ocean sailing, you know, where you have Oracle, and maybe also in cycling, where Team Sky, you know, probably the biggest brand in recent years in cycling. So it's something that people can relate to, I believe. I'm not saying that everyone has an emotional attachment to brands like this, but it's a lot easier for someone to understand Team Odds Bible than it is to understand the owner's name, Different Silks, horse's name I don't remember. That, you know, again, nothing's wrong with that. That's the normal way. But in our setup, I think it's important that those teams have clear and obvious identities, hence the 12 colours and 12 brands.
And where can people follow the races through the media?
So all the races are live on Sky Sports Racing, and the first race of every meeting is live on TalkSport, and all the other 5 races are live on TalkSport too. If you keep your eyes out, if you buy the Sun newspaper, you'll see a preview pull out this Thursday. If you buy the Times, there'll be a preview pull out in the Times this Saturday. And of course, our social channels are getting pretty busy at the moment. And of course, one great thing about having 12 branded teams is that they share social content amongst themselves. So if you check out Racing League on Twitter or Facebook, you'll see quite a bit of action over the next couple of weeks.
And you're looking to attract a younger and more diverse audience?
Yeah, I suppose this is the thing that everyone sort of says to us about the new audience. My personal take on it is that it's not necessarily a new audience you want. It's the person that goes racing once a year or once every 2 years, the person that every year watches the Grand National and maybe catches a bit of Cheltenham. It's those people, I think, that we want to try and drag in, because once or twice a year, racing takes centre stage. The Grand National is the most unbelievable race in terms of people watching. It has an appeal that sort of transcends sport, really. Those people, however, turn it off after that, and they don't watch racing again until the following year. I think that what we're trying to do is just say, look, there's something that's every Thursday night. It's a bit of fun. It's really simple to understand. Everyone knows what a horse race is. You don't have to explain horses running in a line. But I think that the way the kind of traditional racing calendar works is that it's quite hard for people to follow. So let's get the person that goes once a year to tune in to Racing League, play a fantasy game or whatever it is, and see whether we can just capture their attention for a bit. And then maybe through Racing League, they might then just delve a bit deeper into racing in general.
Well, the more people you get interested in any sport is vital to its long-term survival. And you've also got other entertainment on the nights of the races, I think, haven't you? Yeah,
we basically, the racing starts after 6, but we're opening the gates earlier, about 2:00. And the idea is we have a food festival, lots of drinks and, that sort of thing. Plus we've got DJs playing all day and all night. And the DJs, Amy Lauren is our star DJ. She's curated a selection of DJs who are local to the racetracks. So the idea is for them to give back to their fans. So each of those DJs will put their own spin on the day, but the fact is they're from Newcastle, Windsor, Lingfield, etc. And it was important to us to try and do something local rather than just putting on a Tom Jones type at the end of the day. That's not really what our thing is about. It's about engaging with fans throughout. So we'll have fans are able to make playlist suggestions, songs they want to hear, that sort of thing, and meant to be just a bit more casual and a bit more interactive, really.
It sounds like all about getting more people engaged and involved in going racing. And you've also got the Fantasy League, I think, like we've got for football, cricket and lots of other sports.
Yeah, we're doing that with Dream Team, which I don't think Dream Team have ever done another sport apart from football before. So that's another first for racing. That Dream Team game should be out this week. I hope if this is going to go out on Sunday, then it should already be out. So please go play Dream Team. Back to the interaction thing. We've got a Dream Team game. It's very simple. And we've also got the Racing League raffle, which I urge everyone to play. Proceeds of that go to our charity Racing to School, and obviously bearing out the cost of the prizes. But, you can win a racehorse in training for a year. She's a wonderful horse we bought last week at the sales called Majestic Tejan, who has won a race. But again, it's all about trying to get people involved. Like, buy a raffle ticket, you might be able to win a racehorse, but there's loads of other prizes. And we've also got a partnership with Rewards for Racing, whereby fans get rewards points for doing certain things like interacting with the league, tweeting, using social media, etc. So the whole thing is supposed to be interactive, and this is where the brands get some benefit, the fans get benefit from winning prizes and getting rewards, and we just get people interested in the competition. And I think that's sometimes what sport's missing. It does try to be interactive, but it almost feels quite distant. Whereas racing, we can get people quite close to the action, and they can talk to the trainers, they can meet the jockeys and all this sort of stuff. So, it's a good point. Interaction's our thing.
Yeah, and I think actually trainers and jockeys, especially the young jockeys and young trainers today, are very good at communicating to the public. And that's one of the angles where if you can build on their personalities, especially as you said, you've got quite a lot of young up-and-coming jockeys to promote the Racing League.
Yeah, I think they're getting much better at it. I mean, I know a lot of sports women and men, they don't like the media side because it, maybe rightly so, their job is to perform. And I think they sometimes feel that, they're doing enough work as it is, let alone having to stand in front of a camera and be drilled about things. But racing actually very good on social media, especially on Twitter. They obviously, like everyone, bear the brunt of the bad side of that platform as well. As our footballers found out after last weekend. But overall, it's very good, and they are interactive. The trainers, they give you a lot of inside behind the scenes stuff, and I think the jockeys are doing a really good job of that as well.
And how will you measure success this is going to be the first year. Obviously, Racing League is going to continue in 2022.
Yeah, I think for us, there's probably two, like from a commercial point of view, there's a few key measures. I think the viewing numbers are important. If no one watches it, then how will it ever work? And of course, that presents its own challenges because there's so much sport on, there's so many things people can watch and consume. And you mentioned the 100 earlier, but they'll be doing exactly the same thing as we are, trying to get as many Sky Sports viewers to tune into their channel as possible. And I think also, we have to be honest and look at the reaction on social. If I imagine there's going to be lots of good, and there'll be a fair bit of cynicism and criticism of it as well. We'll have to take a view of all of that. Look at the social measuring tools that we have to gauge the sentiment. But you're absolutely right. We will be doing next year, and maybe it'll be even bigger next year in terms of fixtures. And I think also the other thing is, of course, commercially, if our partners, especially the partners that have sponsored teams, want to go again and think it's been a big success for them.
Well, as you said earlier, the T20 revolution, there was lots of sceptics when that started in cricket, and look where we are with that now in the IPL. Can you just remind us of a final message with the key dates, really? Yeah,
so July 29th is when we start up at Newcastle, and then, as you said, we go every Thursday night until September the 2nd, which the finale is back at Newcastle under floodlights, just because it will be a bit darker in the evening by then. So it should be a really interesting finale. And if our sums are correct, we think that really no team should have won the league until the final night. That's how it should work out. Of course, one never knows, but we hope that it goes right down to the wire, so that the finale up in Newcastle gives it the send off it deserves.
Oh, that's unless your Team O'Brien tip will win all the races.
That's true. If Team Ireland do what I think they're going to do, they're also ably managed by Kevin Blake, who's a very popular figure in the racing world. But I know that he and Joseph and Donica have been scheming and getting their team together quite cleverly for the last couple of months. So yeah, I'm not suggesting you have a bet on the O'Briens, but certainly one to watch.
And we'll be having listeners now just checking out the price of that team.
I'm sure. Don't shoot me. That's all I'm saying.
Well, thank you very much, Oli, for joining me on the Paddock and the Pavilion, and the very best of luck for your new venture, the Racing League, which starts on Thursday, the 29th of July at Newcastle Racecourse.
Thanks, Stephen. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Paddock and the Pavilion. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and now on Instagram at the Pad and Pav. Don't forget, if you like the show, please do leave us a rating and review.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
We all know a guy who only occasionally shaves for big occasions, and it's because that occasional shave really hurts. It's the time of year for big occasions, and yet there he is, suffering with that cheap drugstore razor. Let's help him out. Henson Shaving's line of razors, built with aerospace precision, deliver a smooth shave your dad, brother, and even son can enjoy, eventually. With replacement blades just 10 cents each, you'll buy it once, and they'll use it for life. How's that for the perfect gift? Celebrate with 100 free blades on your first purchase, and no subscription headaches. HensonShaving.com/holiday.